It's a pleasure to be here. I graduated from Michigan State in 2015 to start studying for the 7 and 66. I was able to pass those classes or those license exams while actually taking some classes for Professor Still, who most graciously gave me a little more flexibility there when I was turning in some of these assignments late. Still thank him today for allowing me to do that. Really
I saw the future greatness coming. So
thank you, man. Thank you. So from school then, graduated on Saturday. I was in the office on Monday and had the 300, the miserable 300 list names of people to call. The reason I did what I was doing, I worked for a private practice that I was trying to build my own book of business. I felt like that was going to be the way to kind of control my own income. And to be honest, like just from just a pure simplicity, I felt like, all right, if I can have, 50 million of assets under management and I just charge the 1% AUM fee, that creates 100 or 500,000 of revenue. And to me, I'm pretty simple. And I was like, I could live on 500,000 of income. How do I go build that tomorrow? It seemed like just right out of the gate, starting to build that myself. Little would I know that there's so much more to this business. So I had to make every mistake along the way before to figure that out. But that's what I really felt like was the easiest, the most clear path to success for me. And so got into a sales role right out of the gate. Knew less than nothing about real financial planning. It was just out there selling products. So slinging A-share mutual funds with commissions and annuities and being told that's really what financial planning is all about. I brought up the idea of getting my CFP, and my sales-oriented advisor, I'll put quotes around that at the time, told me CFP stood for couldn't effing produce. So that I should just get back on the phone and start selling more. That was really kind of my introduction to the industry. So I knew this wasn't going to be the home for me long term. I wanted to do real planning, and instead of just selling on backlogged Morningstar reports. So that was really how I started bouncing around. Then I worked at a company where I was able to get my CFP, worked there for a couple of years, but then didn't really love all the proprietary products that they sold. So found a home to do great planning, but wanted to do it in an independent fashion. So I ended up starting my own practice almost 4 years ago. So I'm what I guess you'd call a solo registered RIA. So I don't have any broker dealer affiliates. I filed directly with FINRA and the SEC. So I'm audited by the same folks that have 19,000 advisors. And then there's just little old me, and we kind of have to play all by the same rules. So that is the practice that I operate for the last 4 years. I've since then grown to take on one full-time employee. I do have a couple part-time helping me out, and I'm operating this from my bedroom in Los Angeles.
For that, let's take another question.
Mine was for Colin. I know you said you weren't associated with any registered broker. So I'm assuming the benefit of that is you don't have to pay commission to those brokers, but what's the disadvantages of not being registered?
Thought there is, and kind of add on to my initial story, was that I so sadly have dropped my 7 and 66 since then. So I definitely shed a tear on those days after I lost those licenses, or I just let them expire because I don't need them really anymore, with just being directly associated or in licensing with FINRA and SEC. So I think probably one of the big disadvantages would be being able to even maybe being compensated on some of the products. I feel like we should probably defer to Kara and Cam maybe for being able to talk to some of the positives. But so for example, like if I make a recommendation that a client should have a life insurance and I'm not in, I don't have a broker dealer affiliation, I'm not able to receive the commission on that product. And that's kind of a whole nother discussion with how my firm is designed in effort to kind of avoid some of those conflicts of interest. But if you're doing great work for clients, honestly, that's probably just some money being left on the table. And if you're being open and honest about the recommendations. So I'd say probably one of the biggest disadvantages is not being able to be listed on some of those products and trying to have some of the workarounds. So if the client still needs to receive some of those insurance products, who's going to be listed as the agent of record and actually selling them. So there are some services that I work with out there that work with fee only, non-registered advisors that way. So I'm making sure that they're not being upsold by another agent, and making sure that what I actually recommend is implemented. But that's kind of the first knee-jerk reaction to one of the disadvantages. Also, probably just being able to have a bigger name behind you and kind of back you up on some of the compliance stuff, and making sure that you're not saying and doing things that are that could maybe get you in trouble. That'd probably be the second big piece that comes to mind.
Good. Thank you for that. Let's take another question.
I have a question for Colin. What was it like starting your business?
The great Elon Musk described entrepreneurialism as chewing glass and staring into the abyss. I wouldn't say maybe it was quite like that, but pretty similar, because, you know, I had like all this inspiration of like, when I leave the broker dealer, now I'm not going to have all these rules. Like I can create these YouTube videos. I can like get whatever clients I want and charge how I want. And then on day one, I went into my bedroom and like put a poster on the wall and was like, Advize Wealth. Now what do I do? And that was really scary. And the fear hasn't let up too much. I still have that feeling all the time. So getting out and just really getting your own clients and being the practitioner and kind of doing all the above is a big deal. And like looking at your checklist and being like, you know, have a website, like that was on my to-do list. And then when I went to go do that, it's like, okay, am I going to use Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, WordPress? Like, am I going to do all the graphic design myself? How am I going to make sure this thing doesn't get hacked left and right and people are just making fun of me and shutting down my own website? Like there's so much more to it. So to say what it was like, I mean, exhilarating, a ton of fun, you know, the best. I'm so happy I've done it. It's been a wonderful experience. That's definitely taught me so much more than just financial planning. For anyone trying to go down that route, I would definitely caution and hope that you become a really great practitioner first, because if you're still trying to get your CFP or learn the process, because like I was fortunate enough to learn from some really great advisors first, so I knew my systems and I got to the point where I didn't need any help, and the help was starting to become more of an annoyance than it was anything else. So that's kind of the first layer. I'll maybe pause there if there's a more specific question, but that's kind of my first knee-jerk reaction.
Terrific. Thank you for sharing that. Let's take another question.
My question's for Colin too. What advice would you give yourself when you were first starting out, creating your own firm? And what was the workload like the first about 6 months or so?
Probably, again, making sure that you're a really great practitioner. And then if you are going to make that jump, do the non-revenue producing activities as much as possible. So like having your logo done and having the website done and knowing how you want to charge clients. And there's so much out there that you don't really think about that it takes a lot of time that isn't revenue producing, which is so great about going to a big firm. I thought processes were so annoying that I had to check all these boxes when I was at the broker dealer submitting paperwork. Now I have all this paperwork and clients. I don't have any processes and stuff is falling through the cracks and I look like an idiot. So now I'm trying to create processes and trying to create a real business. And I guess I had to make every mistake to like really appreciate that. So my advice would probably be to become such a good advisor that you're ready to do all of the other stuff. Cause I really don't even do a ton of financial planning anymore. Like I have people helping me with that. That's what my full-time employee does. The amount of actual planning that I do continues to go down the more business development and the bigger the firm gets. So there's a lot of great books about that, like the E-Myth with Gerber, I forget his first name, talking about that. And then the second thing would probably be make sure you have a good run rate. So I did not do a very good job of that. I knew it was going to be expensive and I wasn't going to have a lot of income for the first little bit. So my idea was to move back in with my parents, and I had just bought in a house. So I rented my own room out, and fortunately I was able to get a little cash flow out of that. I didn't do a very good job at the time describing the commitment to my girlfriend, who's now my wife, because she was like, making great money out of college and was like, let's go on vacation. I'm like, I'd love to, but I'm completely broke. And I just cashed out all of my money to start a website. And that it was like that for years. Honestly, it's like still almost like that 4 years later. Like I'm still so far behind in earnings compared to my friends and her. So I think really kind of wrapping your mind around the amount of delayed gratification you're going to have to go through. It's hard to overestimate that.
Terrific. Thank you, Colin.
My question is for Colin. What's your day-to-day like?
Just making dancing TikTok videos and trying to hang out with Kim Kardashian. It really depends. I mean, there's whether it's kind of client facing or doing back office work. I would guess that most of our day-to-day is pretty similar. I guess maybe if you guys have more support, then maybe not so much. But if it's a non-client facing day, probably following up on all the promises that I made the previous day and making sure that I'm actually building out some of the plans, getting back to clients and making sure that they're moving forward on getting that traditional IRA moved into their 401k so that we could implement the backdoor Roth strategy that we were talking about. Just kind of random stuff here and there. So those are kind of like the back office days, and then prepping for presentation days. So I try to kind of alternate those so that I am kind of in presentation mode or I'm in back office. We're going to have a bunch of coffee today type mode. And that is kind of more or less the regular cadence. And then when I'm able to come up for air and make some content and finally write my monthly newsletter that goes out about every other month, that's kind of the other time and filling in the gaps. So I would say time management. My operations guy, Ted, would probably make fun of me a little bit on this because he's always kicking me in the butt of what I should and shouldn't be doing. So that's probably another good thing about working at a big firm, because if you're ADD like me, then you might not be as efficient as you probably could be.
Terrific. Thank you for that, Colin.
If I can add there, just like as everyone's thinking about, CFP, Series 7, Series 66, CFA, like all these acronyms, RIA, hybrid model, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. Like, I promise I knew less than nothing. You guys are so much further ahead than probably any one of us were when we were in college in your seats. So as you're thinking about jobs, like there's so many different ways that you can go, whether you want to invest, focus on investments purely, or you want to focus on relationships. I mean, most of my conversations with couples are about what do you enjoy spending money on? What dollar amount, if your spouse spent, would you get mad at them if they didn't talk to you about it? Setting up guilt-free spending accounts. Like I have almost nothing to do with investments on a day-to-day basis. I train my clients to not watch the stock market. I get 0 calls when Russia invades Ukraine. Like they're just so trained. And that's just my practice. Every practice is totally different. So I would just encourage, if you're overwhelmed, to just lean into whatever your curiosity is and just kind of go down that rabbit hole and learn as much as you can about behavioral finance. Or if you're wanting to nerd out, learn as much as you can about, investment efficiency hypotheses or whatever the case. Try to get it right to the nth degree and just have some fun, meet people that, are interested in similar things. That'd be, if you're feeling overwhelmed, I just encourage you to kind of give yourself some grace, have some fun, and follow your curiosities.
Terrific. That's great advice, Colin.
I really think find your heroes. Find people. I mean, Twitter. I mean, Colin and I, Colin's really on Twitter. Sometimes I just like his stuff because it's pretty funny stuff. But other people are all doing TikToks and doing videos, whatever is your way of learning. But find your heroes. And a couple of years ago, Colin was coming into class, and he and another alum, Doug Oscart, they were at this conference, and Colin's like, dude, you know what? The conference was great, but we were sitting out by the pool and Josh Brown was there. So this guy named Josh Brown, CEO of Ritholtz, 1 million followers on CNBC. He goes, we sat down with Josh and had beers by the pool. So find your heroes, learn from them, and then become your authentic self. And to me, I think that's what makes life so fun.
Thank
Colin,
you.
did I miss anything in that story?
No, I mean, for the classroom, but we're still DMing, and it's all about relationships, finding your heroes. Like, honestly, add every single one of us on LinkedIn. It's going to be a huge miss if you don't. Tell us what's up, ask who should we talk to. The Twitter thing, I know it sounds silly and it's not a very cool social media, but it really is a great, like, LinkedIn 2.0. And don't worry about your follower to following ratios or anything like that. Don't follow your friends to see what they're having for breakfast. Like, just follow. There's so much good information all the time. So my Twitter is like, I'd pay a substantial amount to be able to keep that platform.
Fantastic. Well, let me speak on behalf of all the students to thank all of you panelists for your time, your energy, for the enthusiasm that you have for your fields, and the fact you're willing to share it with us. Can we give them a round of applause, please? Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sure students will be connecting with. Please, again, accept my deep appreciation and my hearty thanks. It makes a world of difference to these Broad students that you're willing to take the time to contribute in this way.